Hey, this is Kevin, and today's video we're going to show you how we did this beam install from start to finish, the process, and I'll give you 3 tips on how to up your carpentry game. This project was a basement retrofit with a small first floor renovation. The beam is decorative, and the reason behind it is to provide a transition from the original stippled ceiling to the new flat ceiling. Matching the original wasn't possible, and redoing the ceiling would be out of budget and very disruptive. So the beam was the most visually satisfying option, within budget, and it matches the mahogany beams and trim throughout this 1970s garden home. So the new beam is going where an old wall originally was. We demoed the wall, entryway, and stairway, and added a new ensuite bathroom in the basement where the original staircase was, and designed a new 2-piece bath in the foyer with laundry. The new plans really maximize the space and really connect the original space to the basement. I worked with Sean on this one, and he's going to explain the beam prep.
Hey, so with the beam detail, we did our takeoff to get our materials. I went over lumber selections with the client. We ended up with Sapile. It best fitted to match what was already in the house. Most of the material was already pretty well milled. We gave it final dimensioning and sanding. We ran a dado down the lengths of the sides. That allowed the sides to actually clamp the bottom of the faux beam during the glue up, so we didn't have to have any fasteners on the bottom. Then after that, we gave it a final sanding and applied a coat of Audis oil to pre-finish it prior to install.
So we had to decide where to put the seams in the beam. Do we go dead center? Do we go off center? After discussing with the clients, we decided to go off center and have as long of a clear span as possible with the material that we had. We set up our laser level and used 2 support poles to get the larger pre-assembled piece of the beam in place. With the main section temporarily up, we noticed a few imperfections on the ceiling. The ceiling was not perfectly flat, and the stippled ceiling on one side left too big of a shadow line than we would like. With a chisel, we removed the granules that were in the way. We then reset the beam up on temporary poles and scribed the top of the beam to the uneven ceiling. So scribing is to shape a piece of wood so that it fits the contours and shape of an abutting member. We use painter's tape to make our scribe line more visible. We put a slight back bevel on these scribed cuts to make potential future adjustments easier. Pro tip number 1 is to bend one of the legs of a compass outwards so that the very center of your pencil is 3/4 of an inch exactly away from the end of that leg. 3/4 of an inch seems to be the most common scribe distance in my experience, especially if you set a piece of, say, baseboard up on 2 pieces of 3/4 inch stock, then it's exactly 3/4 of an inch you need. So it's one of the more common sizes. Sean prefers this green scribe jig for a lot of his scribing tasks. It's a lot simpler to use. It simply offsets the center of a pencil from the edge of the jig, a certain distance that's labeled on the jig itself. After bringing the beam to our workbench, we found cutting along this scribe line with a knife, then removing the excess tape made it easier to follow the cut line with a saw. For cross-cutting solid wood, you'll want a blade with many small teeth. But for ripping, which is to cut along the grain, too many teeth would bog down and overheat, so a blade with less teeth is better. Pro tip number 2, put painter's tape on the base of your circular saw so that it doesn't scratch finished material. Pro tip number 3 is if you're going to be doing a bunch of sanding, you want to have a crepe block nearby. A crepe block is made out of some kind of rubber, and it's used against an abrasive piece of paper, sandpaper, and it essentially removes all the resin and sawdust from the sandpaper, greatly extending its service life. We used scrap cutoffs of the same material as the beam to use as cleats to spline the joint. So once we had the first main section up, the next step was to get the last remaining shorter section up. So for the second section of the beam here, we decided not to pre-assemble it as a U. We built it as an L shape first, just putting two of the pieces together, and that way we could actually reach in and make any adjustments as we needed to. And then the final piece is just the last piece put on. Because there was no guarantee that the existing wall is perfectly flat, straight, and parallel to the seam in the beam, we decided to take 4 separate accurate measurements, essentially on the top 2 corners and the bottom 2 corners of the second piece. We used both a laser level as well as a folding rule to double check that this measurement was correct. So to cut our remaining piece of beam to exact length, we squared up one end so that it would match our seam perfectly, and then carefully and accurately measured along each of the 4 outer edges and marked those very, very accurately with a knife. We then connected those points, cut it with a knife, and removed the waste side of the painter's tape. We then followed this line as closely as we could with a slight back bevel, leaving just enough to be adjusted with some sandpaper. Oh, baby.
Buddy, that looks
Mint.
crisp.
It's crispy here.
That looks sharp, Kev. That was a lot of work for that.
A lot of freaking work. We went back and filled over the nail heads with wood filler, and then put some Audie's oil over top of the wood filler so that it all blended in together. Hey, thanks for watching this video. You can watch others like this one right here. And here's a word from Casey.
For the builders and contractors watching, we have some exciting news. Check out ConsciousBuilderAcademy.com, where we are now offering not only our courses, but also great deals on courses from Blue House Energy. Courses like Building Science Basics, Construction Technology, Envelope Fundamentals, and Net Zero Energy for new construction. With the courses through Blue House Energy, you can earn CPD and CEU credits, and you can also save 10% on these courses through our academy, ConsciousBuilderAcademy.com. Link is in the video description below. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.